Well, hello and welcome to episode 32 of the Crystal Clarity Podcast. My name is Sarah Thomas, and I will be your host for this once again as we penetrate the world of stones and crystals with some knowledge and some magic all at the same time. And today I have an episode for you that is about using stones to heal. I want to talk about relationships. I want to talk about attachment patterns a little bit. I want to talk about how stones communicate. And I want to talk about this mineral lazurite today. And really, I want to share with you a potential for bringing on a resurrection or a rebirth in your primary or significant relationships or relationship. And one of the ways that the stones kind of clued me in on how to potentially make that happen. So there's a lot actually to move into this episode, and I think it's important to stick around if you feel like you would like some magic around rebirth in your relationship, like how to shift when you're in those hard spots, or how to be in the death place in our relationships, because our long-term relationships go through all of these deaths and rebirths. And I want to approach today's episode not from the knowledge palace so much, but from the wisdom palace. And the wisdom palace is more about telling a story, and it's how our ancestors, the elders, would teach. They would tell a story, and when we tell a story, instead of giving out facts, when we tell a story, what happens is I think it plucks your own little chords of resonance within, all in your multidimensional self, more than leading you down one path. It's more of like a plucking of your chords process. And I love this path because it feels important. So here's what happened. As I go into the story, I just want to share a little bit about myself, that I my relationship, my primary relationship with my partner, just went through a difficult period. Now, this has happened before, and you may relate that relationships go through difficult periods. And I'll tell you what happened was that we started spending a lot of time apart due to just family things. I was in a different place and she was in a different place, and we spent probably 50% of our time apart in the past like 2.5 months. So while space is really wonderful, space is really good. Actually, we both thrive with a lot of space, but there gets to a point where it just felt like the space becomes disconnection a little bit. And that's okay. But we were growing in really different ways. And I think that we were updating our systems in really different ways too. And a lot of the times, in a relationship, you'll update in the same ways, and then sometimes you update in different ways. And we ended up on these really different paths in really different places. And I think we're going through a lot personally that was, just so much about our own growth process, that sometimes when you're in your own growth process so much, you turn back and look at the relationship and you're like, I'm not feeling much here because I'm going through all this stuff. And like I said, we weren't updating in the same way. We were spending a lot of time apart. And then, just like life shows, we got a couple major stresses. And then, like our bodies are dealing with these stresses more than being able to connect. And a lot of times the relationship, when you have like kids and pets and all this stuff, the relationship, family sometimes gets put last while you tend to all of these other things. I'm saying you. When I know it's first person, it's me, but I'm saying you because I know this is quite universal. So, anyway, we started getting very disconnected. And then we started to like really not know how to reconnect, and things were feeling like, actually things got to a point where we were like, is this going to work out? Like, we were like, maybe this isn't going to work out, because in relationships, there's so much that we can create, and then there's still always so much in the mystery. Like, we never know where a relationship is going to end up, or where it's going, or how long we're going to be together, and like there's this mystery part. And we got to this place because we couldn't update together and we were feeling disconnected, that there was a couple really dark weeks, dark hard weeks, where we're like, are we even going to reconnect? And is this really going to work out? Now, you might feel this happens to you sometimes too. Please holler in the comments or something if this happens to you. I mean, I think that I think that death and rebirth in relationships is normal. Let me know. But even getting into these hard places where like, I don't know if this is going to work out. And then like we're deeply in the unknowing. It's dark. It's a dark cloak over both of us. And in the depth of that darkness, I was like had a visitation by these crystals, and I was asleep, but it wasn't a dream. It was like a visitation. And I get this with crystals. This is the way. This is one of the primary ways that I work with crystals, is that I get these visitations from them as these frequency beings, as these living spirits. And it comes when I'm not expecting it. It is never what I expect it will be. And it always comes when I'm on the edges. So I think that you might also resonate with this, that when I'm on the edge of my normal experience, whether I'm just waking up or just falling asleep or just dropping into meditation, or, however, or on a walk, and I'm, lose, like I go into the zone on the walk and I end up on the edge of, the edges of the mind and the edges of normal, ordinary reality. And I'm on the edges of life, right? In those spaces, that's where the stones are able to connect. And I think that's obviously why so many shaman and woo and medicine people spend their time on the internal, when they go within to find those edges, or they go to the forest to find those edges, like literally in the external to find the edges of the town or the edges of the land. And we find those spaces because that's where we can connect. And that's where these beings from other dimensions and worlds can find us and connect with us. And these crystals visited me, and they were 6 crystals, and they were 6 Lazarite dodecahedrons, and they appeared out of the portal in the darkness. This is not something from my mind. I've never seen this before. Like, I have no programming around this. I've never seen it on TV or any place or on the computer or anything. 6 Lazarite dodecahedron crystals, perfectly ordered in a periodicity, like an ordered pattern, and they were all spinning. And they were all spinning in unison in this very ordered pattern. And the crystals, just by doing that, were able to open their own gate where a big frequency could flood into me through that portal of the symmetry, the order, and the spinning, which is so often how we open these portals with crystals. Like if we could keep them spinning in our visuals, and how they work a lot of times is they'll spin to open things up. And they also appear in these sacred geometries or ordered patterns, because that spinning and the pattern can open a gate for a lot of frequency from these non-ordinary realities to reach us. And I was me but not me, awake but not awake, and I received this transmission from these 6 Lazarite crystals. When I woke up, I was like, wow. I was, although I'm, I guess, somewhat used to this, this one was so profound for me because I have never seen this before. And a lot of my visitations, I see something that I have seen before in some way, right? In my programming, I've never seen the 6 Lazarite crystals spinning in as dodecahedrons in this formation. And when I woke up, I was like, that is so interesting. Now, here's where the knowledge comes in, and I get to kind of like weave together this experience with the knowledge. But it's so interesting that Lazarite is the base element or the core or essential element of Lapis Lazuli. And forgive my pronunciation if you like to say Lazuli. I just say Lapis Lazuli, so that's how I'm going to say it. But it is the base or core essence of Lapis Lazuli. And then Lapis Lazuli will often have extra things in it, like maybe some calcite, maybe some pyrite. But there is, at the core of Lapis Lazuli, is always lazurite. And if you're not familiar with this mineral, you can look it up. Lazurite is an isometric or cubic structured crystal that is dark blue. It is gorgeous. It is a gorgeous dark blue crystal. So I'm thinking, God, it's interesting that the essence of Lapis Lazuli, the core ingredient of Lapis Lazuli, visited me. And I did not have much to make of it at the time, except, wow, to see something like this is great. And to feel the frequency in the transmission. It's not just a dream or from my mind. And then what happened over the next few days, out of nowhere, was a rebirth in my relationship, like a resurrection, like a rising from the dead of my primary relationship. And in the attachment patterns or the attachment wounding that we all experience too, in whatever ways, what tends to happen for me is that I will, if things get hard or difficult, I back away. I go into my corner and I retreat and I get, quiet, and I'm kind of unreachable and inaccessible. Whereas my partner, if something happens, there's more need to connect. Whereas I'm kind of like fading away or drifting away, and that's just like our normal attachment dance kind of. And that just totally shifted, and we got out of nowhere a rebirth of our relationship where we landed in a place that is better than it has been in since this all started, since I had to be away for several weeks, and since this whole cycle, this whole period began. It's now ever better than it was in several weeks or months, out of nowhere. And the reconnection is so, shiny and brilliant and outstanding because of the period of darkness. If we didn't have the period of darkness, I wouldn't be able to see how brilliant this is and the new cycle that it is creating. And it took me several days to look back and be like, I just had a complete resurrection, like a rising from the tomb of my relationship, out of nowhere. And I remembered the Lazarite dream, the portal that the 6 Lazarite crystals open and release that frequency and that blessing onto me. And I want to share with you guys that this is so the way that things are when we work in this quantum world, this nonlinear world. It's just time is not linear. These events are not linear. There's call and response. Like I lay down prayers, I ask for help, I do my work with my stones and my healing work and all of the things that I do as the call. But this is so important for you guys to hear, and just for us always to remind each other, is that like what the response is certainly doesn't always happen in the moment, and what the way the universe responds can happen in such non-linear ways. The ways the universe responds happens in actually such magical ways. And one of the things that it's always going to be unknown the way the universe responds. One of the things my great mentor Jyoti talks about so much is that as people who are learning from this path of the earth, and one of the ways that we're awakening is through our connection with the earth, is that we have to learn patience. And I have been taught this by incredible teachers, that if we're going to walk this path, like patience is because the earth is slow and steady. That's why it picks a turtle a lot to represent it. It's slow and steady, and we have to wait for the response sometimes, And the teaching for us is to not jump ahead, like I put out this prayer, where's the thing? Or I ask this question, where's the thing? But to be able to stay patient and stay back, because the call happens and the response will happen. It's just so mysterious how it happens. And it is so nonlinear. And my job now that the Lazarite gave me the transmission is to respond again. What is my response back? And in that way, me and nature, me and Mother Earth, I'm going to tell you, me and the Tao have this relationship going on of call and response that is profound. Now, when I look at Lapis Lazuli and Lazarite, this core ingredient, this is such an interesting mineral. This dodecahedron, this isometric crystal structure, like it's just like weaving the knowledge. It's like this crystal structure of the dodecahedron creates more stability and more steadfastness, and therefore more power than any of the other crystal structures. So it creates this ground, this deep ground, this earth element for this rebirth to take place. I don't fully understand it, but I'm leaning in now to the dodecahedron, okay, is allowing this rebirth. In the lazurite as well, there is so much alchemy inside this crystal, so much alchemy inside. It starts as a feldspar. It's very feldspar-like: sodium, calcium, aluminum, silica oxide. That's almost exactly like a feldspar, and the sodium can be replaced with potassium, which is very much like a feldspar. But then you get this sulfate, this sulfur energy at the end, and water energy at the end. All that coming together is a lot of alchemy. You get a lot of different elements inside that. There's a lot of, it's like the movement between day and night. It's the movement between life and death. There's opposites in there. There's all these growing, nourishing elements like calcium, and then you get these sulfate atoms and sulfur at the end, and this water moving. I mean, right inside it is like its own cauldron of energy that creates that alchemy. And if you look at the color, it's enough alchemy to create a rebirth. If you look at the color, we know that in Taoist 5-element phenomena, dark blue means rebirth, regeneration, coming back from the dead. And that's not something that we make up as a symbol. In the ancient Taoist 5-element phenomena, the way they do color is very legit. The dark black color is this water element, the depths of dark black. And just as that black starts to turn to dark blue and move back up that wheel from winter into spring, which would be green, black first turns to these very dark blues. And that's about just coming back from the dead. It's about just coming back from the dead, that rebirth. So the color is on, right? That alchemy inside that crystal structure is on for this. And that dodecahedron is creating power and stability. And there's more that I have to learn about that too. I think the dodecahedron is one of the only actual 3D shapes that has been proven to exist in the fifth dimension too. So we have this coming back from the dead in my relationship. And I'm interested too that it's just wild. It took me a couple hours after putting this together too, that Lazarus is the name of the man in the Bible who passed away. And the one Bible verse that I can actually recite my whole life, I've been able to recite this Bible verse. It's John 11:35. And the Bible verse is Jesus wept. Jesus wept. It's actually the shortest verse in the Bible. So if you want to memorize a Bible verse, that's a great one to do. Jesus wept, John 11:35. When Lazarus died, Jesus loved Lazarus so much that he grieved and he grieved and he cried. And he cried those tears. And then Jesus raised him from the dead and brought him back to life, as the story goes. So Lazarus, Lazurite, there's a resurrection, there's a coming back from the dead. There's so much alchemy in this crystal structure. I mean, it's the right color. It's interesting to see this, this stone in these 6 pieces in this periodicity spinning, which opens a portal, right? Spinning has so much to do with everything: time, movement, travel, opening portals, many, many things. But the spinning is like kind of almost makes it like this is a passport to another dimension or an opening to another dimension. We always work with this for opening portals or opening energy. And these coming into these 6 and being able to open a portal for enough frequency to hit me to give us a rebirth in our relationship that I wouldn't have been able to create on my own. And stones often show up or want to be ordered or patterned into these sacred geometries or simply ordered patterns, like a circle of 8 and then a circle of 16. It's because they want to show you what is on the inside. And on the inside of a crystal is this ordered periodicity, this ordered atomic structure. And then they just reflect that kind of 1 octave up. And one of the main languages of the earth, if you tune into how she creates and how she communicates, there's so much mirroring. There's so much symmetry. There's so much repeating of simple patterns. And so that's one of the ways that she just structures herself and her creations. So a lot of times we'll see crystals come in these ordered patterns or geometries. And these ones came in this way because it was just what was needed to open this, portal that needed to open to give me the frequency. So what is within is without. What is above is below. And As we also, one of the main languages and ways that she communicates as well is through presence. It's if she could speak to you about how to really connect with her, I feel that she would say so much about presence. It's one of the main ways that she communicates, one of the main touch points. Just one of the most important things in your whole walk with earth medicine is that presence is really the key. It's where you'll always find her. Now, the lapis lazuli, we know in the texts, we know in our studies in Taoist stone medicine that lapis lazuli is a stone that we use for an 8 extraordinary channel called the Renmai. And the Renmai is this deep meridian within us that is storing all of this information about how we bonded with our mother, all of the attachment patterning that we picked up from our mother, and the ways that we learned how to attach, what we do to get the connection, because we want connection, and no matter what we do in our wild attachment patterns, it's like our way of getting it. And lapis lazuli is the stone that we use to reset the Renmai. We use to nourish the Renmai. We use to open the Renmai to kind of read the records of what was going on with the mother. What did we learn about attachment through the mother? It's not really, we want to kind of, so attachment and love are different. And I think that lapis lazuli, the Renmai, this conversation is like, how do we evolve attachment into love? And that's the potential when we work with the Renmai or we work with lapis lazuli. How do we experience like healthy bonding, healthy dependence? How do we experience oxytocin? Like that love can be joy and joy can be love. Lapis lazuli is all about that evolution, And it is so interesting that this crystal, the heart of lapis lazuli, the essence of lapis lazuli, comes in this form of 6 to open this frequency, to update me, right? To shift me in my own patterns around attachment, and just give us this breakthrough, right? That this dark night was leading us to. The interesting thing too is I looked up as we were talking about Lazarus, John 11:35, and his resurrection from the dead, or being raised from the dead. It was through Jesus's love. I mean, it's a lot in that story about he's grieving, he's crying because he loved him so much, and the resurrection takes place. So it's a love resurrection. It's a remembering of love. And if you look up the root etymology of the word Laz, or the root word of Lazarus, it is, in the original Hebrew, it means God has helped. God has helped. And I surely feel helped by the Lazarite coming to me. So, you guys, this is the main way that I work with stones now. I do work with stones on the outside. I do healing work with stones and with my stones a lot. I set up grids and do things and all these things, but the way they respond so often is through these like frequency visitations, or kind of frequency being visitations where they're teaching me. But they're not only teaching me and showing me how you unravel this from experience, consciousness back down through knowledge. They're also just giving transmissions. They're just giving energy that I can't name. They're giving energy from the unified field. Stones are the laboratory of all possibility. They're the laboratory of the unified field. And so when these things happen, I feel like it's the Tao just drawing me deeper and deeper into the Tao and saying, the Tao doesn't just exist, like where all of these things are actually painted in a picture that makes sense. Stones are these living beings that are part of the whole picture. And it doesn't just exist, but I'm a part of it, and that's the teaching from the Tao and the stones and these visitations, that I'm not just on the outside looking in, but I am a part of the Tao. And as you go forward, I just want you to become conscious of doubt, become conscious of your doubt. Just watch the mind doubt. And as you just witness the mind doubt, as you become conscious of it, just by watching it doubt, something opens where you're no longer governed by doubt. You're no longer stopped by doubt. You watch doubt, and then you get to slip right through into this mystery field where you're having this ongoing communication with these stones that are such incredible healers. I want to just end by saying that you all can take information like this and be like, that resonates, that makes sense. The knowledge is there. Sarah's having the experience. Maybe I'll practice with Lazarite or even Lapis Lazuli to see, how do I create a medicine or call for a response to resurrection or rebirth in my own relationship. I think the evidence is there that this stone, after everything we're tracing it back through the color, chemical composition, what we know in the Taoist understanding, I think the evidence is making itself known that this stone can be part of a relationship rebirth for you, a resurrection in your relationship. Go ahead and make the call. Do something with lapis lazuli, lazurite, make an elixir, put the grid by your bed, make the call, and see how the divine and the universe answers back. So with many blessings to you, I will see you in the next episode.